يعني تاني برضه it's surreal شوية to be honest.
ليه؟
When I started this project كنت في لندن and I was really excited about it يعني. وكنت بتكلم مع واحد كان شغال في one of the VCs فكنت بقول له مين عندك في البورتفوليو that they would be very interesting to speak to. وبعد كده you're not a part of the portfolio and he was saying like you should speak to this person and that. وبعد كده قلت له طب خلاص put me in touch with any of them. وبعد كده قال لي بص بصراحة يعني ماشي يلا بس just give it some time. قلت له خلاص ماشي مش مشكلة. فكنت بقول له طب مين بقى المفروض أكلمه beyond your portfolio and your name was brought up. That was before any interview.
طب الحمد لله. طب مش هتقول لي مين طبعا.
لا ممكن بعد كان حد من سواري فينتشرز that I had met randomly يعني. بس here we are النهارده.
الحمد لله. We've made يعني a lot of friends being in the region back in the day يعني.
It's a full circle I guess.
الحمد لله.
طب ماشي. What's your background لو حد ما يعرفش ايه الباكجراوند بتاعك؟
بقى الباك جراوند زي ما الكتاب بيقول يعني أنا مهندس كهرباء. الباك جراوند ده بس يعني my story starts with honestly my father. يعني I think you'll always find the father or the mother in any entrepreneur story. My father is an entrepreneur. He has his own company من يعني as far as I remember maybe in the 80s يعني ولا حاجة early 80s maybe before حتى. Electrical engineer, entrepreneur. I'm an electrical engineer. I'm an entrepreneur. You can see how that worked. I was I was pretty good at math. And my father, since I was مثلا probably I remember حتى when I was like عارف لما تروح تجيب هدايا العيد. كنت actually I was in Kuwait back in the day. تروح تجيب هدايا العيد وتروح تويز ار اس اللي هو قفل في كل حتة في العالم ما عدا الميدل ايست يعني ما شاء الله احنا عندنا هنا كيدز كتيرة. you go and I remember يعني the things that I used to play with were electric circuits اللي هو عارف the models that you make electrical circuits وكده when I was like 6-7 years. That was the stuff I was doing. I remember my mother حتى we used to do during the summer when we were young. I used to do like everyday math homework during summers. Just sit down and like solve math. For me, math and electrical engineering was like baked in my day to day. It was just a very natural. I didn't have to think twice about يعني what I liked, and I just enjoyed it. I enjoyed solving these problems, and just I could read numbers really well.
And what's the journey أو إيه المشوار اللي أخدته that ended with tribal؟
ابتديت بقى يعني I'll jump many years يعني بس طبعا with electrical engineering computer science يعني electrical engineering back in the day طبعا I think لغاية دلوقتي حتى computer if you want to do computer engineering يعني it's part of the electrical engineering. I did a lot of low level programming and because if I was always into the programming languages كذا and then يعني long story short through my different startups, especially the one at Telecom, where we were doing a lot of work with mobile operators. كان عندنا we were just processing 5 billion transactions a year. يعني we're just يعني we had so much data. In 2000, I started يعني investing a lot of time, just being super interested in data science back in 2012, around 2012 or so. And 2015, I decided to just go do like a data science degree. But I wanted a data science degree that is not just يعني technical only. It's a combination of technical and business. فعملت the NYU Master of Science in Business Analytics. I found it to have the right mix of machine learning and business and strategy. It was perfect for me. I wanted to know how to speak to data scientists عشان هم مش فاهمين انا بحاول اعمل، انا مش فاهم هم بيعملوا ايه، والبيزنس people have no idea what to tell them، ومفيش حد عارف to bridge the gap.
And for context برضو انت كان عندك عيال ساعتها and you had a whole family and then you decided أنا هسيب مصر
Yeah.
and then I'm gonna go to the States and become a student again.
Yeah, يعني it happened. يعني we'll get back to that علشان برضو there's like another personal story in 2013. Why did I go to New York أصلا? But definitely طبعا the MSBA actually program was also, it was a mix of you go and attend and then you can go back. يعني هم بيضحكوا عليك برضه شويه، يقول لك you can go back and you don't have to do it يعني on premise، بس you're super consumed يعني definitely it's super demanding يعني. ف how did it lead to Tribal؟ إنه at the MSBA program my capstone project was predicting startup success. So it's really underwriting the new economy. So we started looking at founders. And how do we find the best founders as early as possible? And it was really inspired by just being in Endeavor and being part of Endeavor. Back then I was a board member at Endeavor, selected entrepreneur. I had this network of amazing people. How can we find these people as early as possible? And how can we find these people as early as possible to invest in حتى?
And then how did this go from this idea you had of like what are the characteristics to Tribal?
We started it was called Angel with an AINGEL, and the whole point was you can write angel checks and you can really pre-seed startups, you can find them early وكذا. And we did this algorithm. It worked really well. The founder of the NYU Center for Data Science was the person who reviewed it. He was very excited about what we did and what we built. He joined as an advisor and he's like, you guys have to commercialize this. What happened was we just left school, we formed a company and we started selling the scores to VCs. It was a very good way for me to get plugged into the Silicon Valley VC community and start building relationships outside of fundraising. For me, it was so much value. And talking to VCs and understanding back then كمان data-driven VC was just a thing that was growing, and lots of LPs were writing احنا data-driven VCs, anyone who's using data, they usually score higher, etc. It was easy for me to build these relationships and get to know a lot of the VCs back in the day, back in 2016, 17, 18, in this range. It started with this, selling scores to VCs, and then it expanded into selling scores to banks like Silicon Valley Bank and others. And then we started to see the application of our data on financial services. And we started by experimenting and seeing we can move up the food chain. If we're able to identify the best, impact doesn't have to come from investing alone in startups and in SMEs, right? At that point, honestly, it was focused on startups. Impact doesn't have to come just from investing in SMEs. They actually have other problems. Startups have a problem back in the day وحتى دلوقتي getting access to financial services. Why are we narrowing down this whole thing to just investing? We can extend credit to these companies. We can extend payment rails that are problematic for them. ما كانوش عارفين يطلعوا cards. If you look at founders in the US and outside of the US, getting access to corporate cards to pay for your advertising and your hosting and it was not there. We can have an impact on them outside of investing, outside of mentoring, outside of all of these things. There's another element, there's another layer of value creation for them. I got super excited actually. It was very aligned with what we're doing. And what was my intention with Angel from day one is to have that impact. بس we had to go have a conversation with our investors and tell them we're not going to stop at giving scores. We're going to actually do the financial service. Like, what are you guys doing? You guys nuts? No, but we did design sprints. I've tested this with like a whole bunch of Endeavor entrepreneurs. This is what they're saying. And I had like my presentation to investors at that stage, the pre-seed, seed stage actually was all audio of founders saying, when can I get access to this? Absolutely, 100%. I need this. We would use it right away. Is this live or not? This was the reaction. We just knew right away, there's just very high need for what we're offering.
And معلش احكي لي اكتر طيب على الديزاين sprints. يعني ايه الديزاين sprint and why you decided to use it to prove and there's something there and this is where we should be taking the business.
Design sprints has been عارف اكتشاف زي ما بنقول اكتشاف design sprint was first introduced by Jake Knapp, I believe, and how he was at Google Ventures. It was a way for you to get to test or get to zero idea, basically knowing a problem, right down to a user tested in just under 4 days. Because the typical process حتى back then اللي هو بقى lean startup و MVP and build something super scrappy بس get it out there وكذا. برضو how long is that going to take? 1 or 2 months? For over a year, how many shots do you have? How many shots do you would have what? Maybe 12 shots, 6 to 12 shots at something to test and iterate on. And it's going to cost you. If you're a startup, $90,000 burn مثلا, back in the day, now we're around that. هتست MVP في قد ايه شهرين $180,000. But what does 4 days look like? 4 days, 90,000, you're looking at 12,000. 4 days, right? 12,000 versus 180,000. It was a no-brainer for me. Plus, it's feedback right from the customers. And one of the worst things that I did was talk to advisors and talk to investors. I was like, hey, we're thinking of taking this from here to here. What do you think? But we were like, عارف سنوات التيه بالنسبة لنا. It was like, I think it was like June 2018, I believe, until مثلا November of 2018. That period for us was like سنوات التيه تايهين. We have this thing, it's working, people are using it, but there are other things that we can build on top of it. But what do we do? And you start asking people and it just causes more chaos and confusion as opposed to more direction. So when I came to see design sprints, I was like, that's exactly what we need. We need to hear it directly طبعا from the customers. Stop asking people. Stop asking like people who you think are super smart. Just get it out there and test it with people and do it super fast. Because we always knew you had to test with customers, but it would take too long. But I've been super passionate about the use of design sprints, and it made us be ahead of competition significantly and lead the industry in many things in terms of propositions and features and tribal pay tribal cashback in the day والحاجات دي كلها. These are all things that came from design sprints we did. But we were one of the first companies that launched a card and then launched tribal pay just because we're just testing what is it and just being close to customers. In short, design sprints has been a superpower. It's superpowered our ability to learn fast.
And how do you design a design sprint ده?
It's a 4. طبعا the book, actually there's a book called Sprint by Jake Knapp. It says, and it's a 5-day program, 5-day. If you do the master class and you do the actual training وكده, you'll find that there's a version of it that's 4 days. This was back in 2019. So I don't know if they've improved it. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it's 3 days now. I don't know. I think it's too much. But let's say it's 4 days. It's a 4-day process where you start with kind of problem definition. You start doing sketches. The best thing about a design sprint is the strong byproduct of it. You have 5 to 7 people together, working together. Back in the day for us, it was in the same room that are working together alone. يعني احنا كلنا شغالين مع بعض بس برضه we're working alone. كل واحد شغال بيعمل حاجة. And then you put all of this stuff together. Everyone's contributing to ideas. It's not like the loudest voice. You don't have like your best salesperson pitching their ideas, and your techie person who doesn't know how to sell ideas gets drowned out. It's not like this. Everybody gets an equal shot at showing how they think they would approach this problem, and it builds this connection between people in a different way. When you look at everyone at the company who's with us or even left, and you tell them like what do you remember about your experience at Tribal the most? What have you enjoyed? They always say that time when we used to do like these design sprints and stuff. People really liked it. It's hard to say, and the main thing is discovery, some sort of initial sketching, and then you have a designer who starts putting together what this clickable prototype / flow will look like. What is it that you're testing? You have someone scheduling user interviews. By day 4, you do the user interviews and you do the debrief at the end of the day. Whole thing is like 4 days of people just brainstorming around, this is the problem, this is what we want to test, this is how we're going to test it, this is what it looks like, and then you actually test it. Condensed it in a super tight deadlines are usually good. You have to have clock mastery and you get it done in 4 days.
ومن خلال الديزاين sprints you were able to find that product market fit essentially, صح?
Yeah, initially you see kind of that your hypotheses around where what customers value. You can test willingness to pay. You can test many things using this messaging, market messaging, use cases for whatever you have. There's so many things that you can learn through a design sprint. It's like a Swiss Army knife, and you can do a lot with it. But product market fit is a bit broad, obviously, and I don't want to use just product market, because then you have to get it out and you have to see how people are using it and what are your economics. And if you start charging, are people still using it? But it gives you a good directional path of this is a path where you can continue to go and explore.
If we were to assume خلاص through the experiments it makes sense and there is traction في الحتة دي and the economics make sense, how did you decide بقى go to market strategy and خلاص we have this, let's go?
We decided طبعا at that point we started by building the product for real. People saw something that looked real, but it wasn't real. And I think that has so much value, by the way, versus ما نعمل لهم sketches وعارف اللي هو what's it called, there are other methodologies that are used where you just sketch and do this. I think that creates a gap in people's minds and they feel like they need to contribute to the idea and they start throwing ideas at you. يقول لك لا بس عارف الحتة دي مش عارف ايه. They want to add value to the process بس when they see something final, it's a very different mindset for users to عشان كده one of my favorite feedback was like هو is this live ولا is this live ولا is this a test ولا ايه. I love this feedback because that's the exact that's exactly what you need to kind of get out from a design sprint. People believing you're just once I just need to press a button and it's live or it's in beta or something like this. We built and then we launched على طول within the Endeavor network. I just pulled all Endeavor friends from all over the world. We went with like a shotgun approach of let's test everywhere. We're not going to focus on anything right now. We're going to test Middle East. We're going to test LATAM. We're going to test Southeast Asia, everywhere. Let's see what the problem looks like on the ground with each of those. And it's interesting, you found like the need is there pretty much across all markets. The nuances of servicing them changes a little bit. في بلاد فيها currency fluctuation. They want to settle in local currency. في بلاد they have real-time payment rails locally. So you need to set up local rails for payments as well. You start getting into the nuances, which a design sprint may or may not uncover. فطبعا you get on the ground and then بقى you start looking at. But my first طبعا was my very basic يعني go to market was just let's do this through Endeavor right away. And then you start by testing and iterating on different acquisition channels and expanding your scope. You start with this, with startups, then you start growing into either SMEs also on this. We started getting a lot of this. Startups, friends of startups, investors in startups are like, we invested in this company. احنا عندنا شركة كبيرة. We have the same problem. Can we get on board? Yeah, sure, get on board a company that's doing, I don't know, $50 million or $30 million a year. Yeah, come on board. We found like this problem started to, we started to see that this is a problem for SMEs as well of different sizes. And that started to become actually a problem for us. We saw customers from 22 markets. We saw customers in all stages of their VC-backed, non-VC-backed, small, medium, large, seed stage, growth stage startups. We saw everything. Industries, 25 plus industries. We were in this move and we had everybody come in. The need was there. And that causes, that can cause in growth mode because and you're trying to grow, you're trying to service more and learn more. We were just open to everything. But obviously when we had to be efficient, we started to focus a lot more on who exactly has highest product market fit, but for real, looking at the data that says this is high product market fit and then doubling down on them.
وايه بقى اللي كانت الانديكيتورز اللي بصوا عليها and these are the components of what it means for the perfect product market fit. ازاي قررتوا ان دي مكسيك؟
Yeah. هو في بقى product market fit، في founder market fit، في founder product fit، في كذا fit المفروض يجوا مع بعض علشان مش بس product market fit. احنا بالنسبة لنا Saudi was Saudi and the region actually was back in 2019 was very different than what it is today. Regulatory perspective, infrastructure, open banking. Well, you saw LATAM طبعا as from a regulatory perspective, برضو from a infrastructure perspective, especially on open banking, market sizing, interest in general, speed of growth, الحاجات دي كلها, we found there are strong tailwinds for us there. And we made a conscious decision to definitely maintain our operations, try to service as many countries as we can from a global platform, but get a little bit more deliberate about growing and winning in Mexico specifically, given many factors. Its proximity to the US, the currency, the amount of trade between both of them, the cross-border needs. It's very different than Brazilian. The cross-border Brazilian needs, مثلا, is very different than cross-border needs in Mexico. Operationally, it was easier. There were just a lot of factors that made sense for us to try and focus more and more on Mexico at that point. But that's one of the reasons why we were like, okay, we're going to deliberately grow in LATAM during this phase. Out of all regions and markets, and especially in Mexico, we're going to double down on Mexico.
And how deciding these are the factors that I will be optimizing for بصفة عامة بقى
Yeah. I think market selection, to be honest, is one of the most underrated exercises ever. It's so important. When I learned this طبعا the hard way and a good way, طبعا doing it ourselves, but also Endeavor has this program with Harvard where they select every year a group of founders and execs from Endeavor companies. They go to a special Endeavor Harvard created program called the Scaling Entrepreneurial Ventures. I went to that one. Maybe it was 2012 or 13, حاجة زي كده. Or was it 14? It was 14. Where we look. There was a whole case about selecting markets and how do you prioritize markets and how do you do this. it's such an underrated يعني exercise, and the show of يعني how deliberate you are about them. You put the factors. You can potentially put weights to the different factors if you want. But at the end, when you put the factors, for me, we do it in a very special way. When we need to go kind of deep on selection, and it's like we have like these 4 or 5 markets that we really need to select between, where there's like a question mark about them, where their numbers are close وكده شوية. We do like حتى Monte Carlo simulation on top of the market selection بالweights. But so basically you put all the factors that you're considering. You try to put a weight or not to each of these factors, and you score entities and score markets based on that. احنا for us طبعا you have to look at regulations. Can you service this market globally ولا لا? You look at the infrastructure, the availability of partners or partnerships in these markets. Operationally, from a cost perspective, is it expensive to operate in this market ولا لا? What's the market potential? I can tell you can probably list at least 10 to 15 different factors that touch market regulations, operations, etc., etc. It's a very I think it's a very deliberate exercise that a lot of founders should be conscious about. And sometimes it's so clear you don't have to do the math for it. Sometimes it's clear our big market is, I don't know, Saudi ولا Nigeria ولا كذا ولا كذا. This is where you just go
And how do you ازاي بتحط رقم جنب الفاكتور؟ it's one thing ان انا ابقى عارف qualitatively ان regulation مهمة، بس ازاي بحط رقم جنب الريجيليشن عشان بعديها اقدر اعمل الويتنج؟
There's categorical and then there's numerical. انت النهارده ممكن احط if you size مثلا, let's say we size a number of SMEs in the market, for example, it's just a number.
صح.
If you look at regulation فيش number بس you will have to put something subjective شوية. بس categorical out of 10 we believe in here it's 8 out of 10 أو it's 1 out of 10. You try to you have to mix both, to be honest.
وانت اتكلمت على مونte كارلو simulations. فده بيحصل بقى بعد ما انا بحط assign numbers جنب كل حاجة من الفاكتورز، وبعد كده بران بقى
The Monte Carlo simulation, what it does, the way I've done it in my case, you do a Monte Carlo simulation on the weights, not on the scores. So you fix the scores that you've given لكل factor, بس you do a Monte Carlo on the weights. فأنا بقول هو الريجوليشن ده الويت بتاعه ايه؟ 1 ولا 10؟ Okay, in many cases you can have gating factors which you just remove. gating factors والله مش هينفع ناخد الريجوليشن هنا فخلصت مش I will not consider it. بس let's assume إنه all of them are they're not gating factors. It's not like a switch one off. It's a spectrum, potential spectrum. You will just run a Monte Carlo on the weights, and you look at the rank بتاعت the markets based after the simulation ends. You have 10 factors. You're going to say randomly Monte Carlo will run على 1 to 10. It gives you the full breadth of the weights for each of these factors, and it's going to give you each market where it's going to land irrespective of how you weight them. عشان ممكن اقعد انا والانفسترز والبورد والتيم نقعد نتخانق، لا بس ده الويت بتاعه كذا، لا طب خليه كذا، طب مش عارف ايه، لا ده اهم من ده. It's a good discussion عامة to understand these things. But in many cases what we've seen is if you run this, if you're trying to pick between Colombia, Chile, Peru, مش عارف Brazil، الحاجات دي كلها، and you start putting all of these factors، هو خلاص هيبقى في 1 or 2 markets that are known to be, there will, irrespective of how you weight them, they're always going to be number 1 or number 2. You just get to you cut to the chase.
And what was the go-to-market strategy once بقى خلاص قررنا إن هي دي؟
We started doing a lot more بقى indirect, and we're hiring a on-the-ground sales team, marketing, and start to try and grow a little bit more consciously inside Mexico. partnership. يعني we had a mix of sales, partnerships and marketing activity. يعني just a little bit more traditional beyond about just tapping into the networks like Endeavor, etc. We started to go a little bit deeper in the market using the three: sales, marketing and partnerships.
وكانت ايه اكبر التحديات ساعتها ان you if I can assume correctly it didn't come naturally ان انت تبقى في Latin America and you're launching there. There
Yeah.
aren't many entrepreneurs that do that.
Yeah.
فايه كانت التحديات ساعتها يعني بالنسبة لك؟
والله يعني I can't يعني being exposed to potentially a new culture. بس يعني الغريبة انه يعني بصراحة في مكسيكو تحسهم قريبين برضو مننا. يعني تحس انهم قريبين قوي من المصريين والعرب شوية في يعني how they build relationships, يعني how business is conducted. ف ما حسيتش ان انا you didn't feel like you're an alien in this mix. يعني you just meet people وكذا. Sometimes you would have every now and then if you're talking to an SME, they don't speak English وانا my Spanish is not that great اصلا. فيعني هنعمل ايه؟ فبنقضيها بنعمل جوجل ترانزليت. يعني في شويه حاجات كده بتلاقي انت قاعد انت ميتنج مع الكاستمر ومعاكوا جوجل قاعد معاكوا في الترابيزه and you translate live وتقعدوا تيتريت كده. يعني maybe that part is a little bit harder. From building a team it was good. احنا يعني we have a very diverse team overall. ما حسيتش يعني honestly I can't say no we faced a challenge. I think some of the challenges in general were more on the macro side where يا نهار أبيض COVID hit. طب إيه اللي هيحصل؟ فلقينا إن COVID actually grew the business مش didn't hurt the business يعني. overall I think the challenges were not more. I don't think يعني there was like market challenges or cultural challenges. يعني you just need to learn more and just have people locally on the ground that you can learn from and iterate with.
انتوا دلوقتي you've doubled down على المكسيك و it's going well. هل في pivotal moment where you realize خلاص دلوقتي محتاجين نسكيل beyond المكسيك ونطلع بقى
احنا we were actually احنا يعني we're using that global platform to service so many countries. We started to يعني we have to make a hard decision. يعني this is where مثلا you have to say والله I'm deliberately going to lose 20% of my revenue يعني مقابل operational efficiency. I will deliberately lose this base of customers مقابل ان احنا our credit performance يعلى يبقى احسن overall. مقابل انه احنا the team is not that stretched. مقابل ان احنا to solve some to focus our engineering resources اكتر من ان انا اجري واحاول solve small problems here and there in markets that are not generating much. ف you need to think about these trade-offs. The number one role that I have as a CEO is to allocate resources, time and money. So, time and money, and obviously people's efforts towards the things that matter the most. From a resource allocation perspective, we made the conscious decision we will forego some revenue مقابل إن إحنا we improve our overall well-being internally. يعني إحنا as a team don't get overstretched. Our NPS will go up, our credit performance will go up, our revenue will go down. مش يعني the trade-off بقى was worth it for us.
Across الحاجات اللي انت قلتها دلوقتي دي منها برضو ال NPS and the revenue إلى آخره. How do you set those milestones أو الأرقام اللي بالنسبة لكم هتكفي لدلوقتي عشان ال overall sustainability of the team and the business؟
يعني احنا overall يعني when you look at the OKR, we use OKRs يعني almost religiously. I try to use OKRs almost religiously عشان لما ابتدي يعني أي وقت لاحظت إن إحنا بنبعد عن OKRs there's a lot of misalignment and people are just operating without knowing what we're doing. And people start trying to throw in these other alignment mechanisms that just create more confusion as well. I know OKRs, there's so much talk about OKRs. People say it works and people say it doesn't. What I know is for us, it's important and it works when it's taken seriously. OKRs in general, you need to try and shoot for the 80% 80% target. And if you achieve 80%, then you've really succeeded. If you achieve 100%, then maybe you didn't shoot high enough. The way we use OKRs is this is a change agent. OKRs for us are not target setting, it's a change agent. فأنا بالنسبة لي لما أجي أset something مثلا on the revenue side, I know it's extreme, but I know it's driving a change in the business. Otherwise, it's a KPI. Yani it's just a KPI in the business. I'm not going to try and put a KPI as an OKR unless there's a drastic change that has to happen, yani a tectonic change, not an incremental change. And that tectonic change means that we need to change how we're operating in a function or across functions overall. I continue to think of OKRs mainly as a change agent, yani as a marshalling event for change. You set targets that you think we're going to get there 80%. And if you get 80% there, then it's something and you aspire. We try to set them as such, not to be a little bit more overambitious as opposed to being realistic and yes, we can hit them. بتيجي بقى دي ساعات يعني it makes it a little bit harder on the founders on managing the board and managing the board expectations. You need to, as a CEO, you have three areas يعني which I've learned through reading multiple VCs وكذا on how people think about this. The best model is really evaluating the CEO on three factors mainly. It breaks down يعني. Number one, does the CEO or the leader of a function حتى they know what to do? يعني is the story clear? Do they know what to do? Do we trust the decision making? Yani how are we making decisions, etc., etc.? That's number one. Number two, can the CEO or leader achieve what they set out to achieve? And it's a function of, do you have the right people in the team? Do you have the right processes? Kaza, 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 kaza. Well, number three is, do you achieve the results that you set out to achieve? دي بقى فيها board management وفيها بقى يعني setting the targets و how are you progressing against the plans يعني are you really doing it ولا لا. Most people focus on the last one, although I think the first two are very important يعني. These are kind of three layers. The third one is important. You really do try to show and you're executing and you're achieving towards the goals that you've set. Becomes hard when you say in my OKRs. It's just setting expectations with the board, setting expectations with investors. And this is what we're shooting for. So our base plan is we're shooting for 80% there. Educating them on how you're making, yani, setting these targets. It's super important. We try, yani, I personally try to celebrate the 80% as opposed to the 100% more. Yani.
فلو هنلخص اللي انت لسه بتقوله دلوقتي، هو هنحط ال OKRs للمكسيك مثلا، هنقول هنحط التارجتس دي وبعد كده هنوصل ل 80% منها، وبعد كده لما نوصل لكده دلوقتي احنا جاهزين ان احنا نطلع بره المكسيك او الهوم ماركت اللي احنا ابتدينا فيه. And that's like the milestone. And I assume then هنrun another Monte Carlo simulation where it informs مفروض expand فين بعد كده and do the exercise all over again.
Yeah, you can use Monte Carlo. You can, يعني, you don't have to use Monte Carlo every single time. If you have مثلا, if a decision is almost clear, يعني, you wouldn't use it. يعني, فأنا بالنسبة لي مثلا, we're sitting and we're looking at the top economies. احنا at the end, our mission is to empower SMEs to grow and compete in a global economy. Emerging market SMEs. When you look at emerging market SMEs to compete and grow in a global economy using financial services, وعندك top 20 emerging market economies, and you look at the markets that you're in as a company, وتلاقي مكسيكو وتلاقي برازيل وتلاقي سعودي وتلاقي ايجيبت ومش عارف باكستان وتركي واندونيسيا وكذا. You start looking at them, and if you do a quick rank, على طول هتلاقي a couple of contenders. And then يعني experience can kick in, knowledge can kick in. You don't have to, you can write it. So when you write, برضه things become clear. So we wrote down يعني what are the top 10 factors that would make sense for us to consider as we look at this. And على طول for us يعني Saudi became a very strong case for us to double down on.
Let's explore further حتة السكيلينج. بالنسبة لكم كان ايه أكبر challenges في حتة السكيلينج now that you've decided on the markets and خلاص it's happening? What were the biggest challenges and how did you overcome them?
I think our biggest challenge is we did it too good. We were too good. Because when you think about scaling, it's all about people, having the right people. We went back to عارف يعني first principles النهارده. If you're going to scale and you're going to grow, it all comes down to people. How do you create an engine that can identify and attract and hire the best people as fast, يعني not as fast as the best people with the right volume, right throughput that you would need to scale. We invested in, يعني from first principles thinking كده, you create an acquisition engine that gets you the people. And at that time, يعني honestly, it was a hyper competitive market, and talent in that market كانت scarce. For us, if you get the best people faster and you can retain them and excite them, and smart people want to work with other smart people, in Ninta, you will be able to really dominate the market as you build. يعني hire and grow a group of smart people together الأول and then go next. We did this too good علشان we got to a state where we built this talent attraction acquisition process that can get you up to مثلا 40 new people every month. We were just يعني can you imagine you can go from 0 to 400 in 10 months يعني. We did it too good, and we hired amazing people, we got people on board, and then the market turned on us. فده طبعا that was يعني we had to slow down growth, focus on a different set of economics, and focus on a different type of growth model that is more data-driven, product-driven, etc., as opposed to just kind of old-fashioned growth. Operationally, you didn't have to be in all of these markets. There was a premise in Inta, you have to be in, like if a customer has operations in all of these other markets, you have to be in every single market. Okay, I get it. بس يعني, is this the segment that you really want to grow with Deloitte in this market that we're in, etc.? You start making these trade-offs that we talked about. I don't have to be, it's operationally heavy and very costly ان انا ابقى موجود في كل الماركتس دي. انا مش محتاج كذا مش محتاج كذا. The problem is we actually did it too fast. يعني I don't think we had a problem scaling from that perspective, to be honest.
What was the lesson learned هنا؟ معظم الشركات اللي في العالم عندها مشكلة إن هي تسكيل. What was it that made it that easy بالنسبة لكم؟
What made it easy for us? Definitely having the right people that match the problem. Yani you hire the right team that match the problem. If you have a good product, يعني طبعا المشكلة it's very hard to have like a blanket answer يعني for everybody. But what I've seen in problems with scaling, they can come from acquisition is too high, our conversion is too low. Why is this the reason? Is it a problem? Is it a wrong sales team, or the product doesn't have a fit مع this specific segment? ولا يعني ولا the market dynamic. يعني there are just multiple. It's very hard to blanket set it صراحة as what is it that is a problem for a company to scale. احنا بالنسبة لنا الحمد لله we're fortunate enough ان احنا the product itself was in demand. يعني the product itself was, people needed the product, people wanted this, the payment, the facilities, the financing, they wanted these. فبالنسبة لنا it's really matching our acquisition and the cost of acquisition to يعني to the needs of the company.
ماشي. لو شركة أو ستارت اب لسه مش عارفة ازاي تدايجنوز ايه المشكلة, whether مثلا is the cost of acquisition too high أو conversion is too low, do you have any advice على how they can diagnose المشكلة فين؟
في كذا حاجة يعني, بس في an investor, a data driven investor اسمهم Tribe Capital. مش احنا مالهاش علاقة بينا يعني, بس Tribe Capital, they were ex Social Capital, the team بتاع Social Capital. They have يعني, if they search for Tribe Capital, I think it's called the quantitative approach to product market fit. They give you a whole bunch of analytics, and there's actually a version 2, I think. They give you a whole bunch of stuff from an analytics perspective, and know how do you understand your product market fit from a data-driven way. So I think that's step number 1 in general, to understand, do we have a product problem الأول? يعني how is the retention? How's kaza? The best thing is they give you the actual queries that you need to run on your data for you to generate that same dashboard. احنا from day one على طول أول لما طلعنا, I closed the seed round, I invested in a data infrastructure immediately, just by nature of who I am. And I think the founder, والله يعني the founder's touch on a startup has to be there. يعني and الأول people can shy away from it, but you should lean in. يعني the founder's personality and the founder's presence in the company and different thing has to be there. يعني. So between myself and Dwayne and Kaza, there is that touch. People can sense, whether it's through the values, whether it's through يعني how we approach problems. So just given my mindset عامة of being just loving numbers, analytical driven, kaza, we invested in that data infrastructure super early, and we got that product market fit engine, yani dashboard, and that was like our very first dashboard that we built. But that diagnosis عامة, if you have an early stage founder, do I have product market fit? Is my product, how is my product interacting? If I continue to scale, if I try to scale this, yani, is this good for me, bad for me? So I think that's step number 1. And then it's really experimenting on growth channels.
I guess this answers the question of how you were able to find that product market fit, where you've built that infrastructure والهيكلة, نعرف لو احنا ماشيين في المكان الصح ولا لا, للمكان الصح ولا لا.
وده initial, عشان I think برضو product market fit can continue to change with market changes, market dynamics, interest rates go up. يعني are you able to get customers to pay as the price increases? Yes, if no, طيب what kind of customers are willing to pay? What kind of problems are you? But it's I don't think يعني you hit product market fit and then خلاص you're done. Plus in انت you have, عارف, like you've got these new products that come out, for new life cycles that come within. You're always kind of keeping an eye out on, do I have product market fit? I could have it for this product set, or I can have it for this product set with this segment, but it might grow or it might fall as you evolve.
صح. بس لو ما فيش حتة الأرقام دي, مش هبقى عارف أصلا لو أنا رحت الماركت تاني how I'm performing. It's extremely foundational.
Yeah.
نروح لحتة hiring, you said it was really pivotal ان انتوا تعرفوا تسكيلوا برضو. What was your approach there to get the best talent? And also let's touch upon على حتة ال MPS دي which you spoke about earlier.
Yeah. From a talent perspective, definitely I think I've underrated برضو how important is having the right يعني people leader, HR/people leader in the company. I think it's very important in Inta when founders are scaling their companies, they have to have a very good line of sight of how we're doing on our ability to acquire and find the right talent, get them excited and get them to join, the talent acquisition part, the retention part, and the performance management part, which includes also the feedback and the feedback loops. I've made the mistake of focusing on one and not the other at different times. And if you focus on this too much, you lose a little bit of this. If you focus too much on the performance management, if you focus too much on the trying to get the low performers to be high performers, then you're making a mistake. If you don't build the right systems and Inta to continue to evaluate performance very diligently, you're going to be making a mistake. If you don't have the right tools and processes to attract and onboard people, but you're making a mistake. It's a lot of work, and if you don't have a good partner with you that understands the breadth, and it's super hard because usually people come from one of these fields, and people in talent, and people organizations, they are either coming from an acquisition background, a talent acquisition, or they're coming from a business partner performance background. And you always need to make sure you're aware of their strengths and they're aware of their strengths and the areas where they could have a blind spot, and make sure that they augment themselves with a team that covers these three areas. At any point in time, if you're not doing any of those properly, you can hurt the organization. And I've been through it myself.
ايه learnings من هناك? How do you identify the areas of strengths and the areas of weaknesses? Then there's only so much you can learn from an interview with them.
Yeah, it's hard. Yeah, it's very difficult, صراحة. It's very difficult, and in general, يعني برضو each founder comes with their own style. Personally, again, even when it comes to the people part, I try to be more. Yeah, I try to understand from a numbers perspective. يعني how analytical is this person? يعني doing performance reviews. أنا بالنسبة لي مثلا one of the best tools that I've used in the past that measures kind of, even from a culture perspective, you can feel the culture وكذا, بس you want to measure engagement of your team. We used Culture Amp for a long time, and it was great because with Culture Amp you can start seeing dashboards بتاعت this is this team and this team, and this is how they feel about this and this, and you can start having like a more data-driven يعني approach to how we're doing overall as a company. I start seeing if that person is comfortable with numbers. What have they used in the past? Have they used these tools or لا? It's hard to say يعني what do you look for in an interview. The other thing that I usually do that I found برضو it hurts when I don't use it is there's this product called Thomas International. I think if you search for Thomas International, THOMAS, they have a personality profile assessment that they do. And it's a very simple 20, I think it's 22, 24 questions that any candidate answers. There's no right or wrong answer, but it gives you kind of this disc profile. And there are so many other tools that have like disc ومش عارف ايه personality. This one is the best because the profile, the output of it, and the questions themselves are easy. It's an easy process. They don't give you like a 90-page report and then you have to look through. It just gives you 2 to 3 pages max. It's been spot on. It creates very high, it creates this very high self-awareness for the candidate. It creates very high awareness for you in this is the natural tendency of this person. And then once you have this, there's also another tool there for job matching where you actually design for this role. It's not just about your experience, it's about your skills, your natural strength. I can probably hire someone with maybe a little bit less experience, but their skill set, their own personality is so much attuned to what this role needs that they can perform really well and can excel. So you can create that match and say, okay, for someone to excel in this role, it asks you a few questions and it tells you, this person has to have really good people skills هنا, مش عارف ده كذا. They have to be able to organize other groups of people. They have to influence ideas ولا لأ. Do they need to do routine work? مش عارف إيه. It gives you this whole set. And then it does a match between that person and that role. But that's another angle that I look at when I'm looking at people in general, as they're joining the team. And it's a great discussion. And it usually gives you a set of potential interview questions that are very nuanced to this person in this role, or their personality in this role. It's been great for me to continue to use this and try to line up people to their strengths, natural strengths.
How do you score person you want it?
I have my own personality, and actually I have it public on our own Notion. I have a page on working with Amr, and I have my personality profile assessment there, so people know what they're dealing with.
And what is it?
هبعت لك بقى اللينك. بص عليها بقى طويلة. بس surprisingly it has a lot of the stuff اللي هو when Amr he relies on data. He's very shrewd with numbers. مش عارف ايه. He might not come in with confidence, but if he has the numbers, if he doesn't have the numbers to back him, ممكن ما بقاش confident in discussion. So if I have the numbers behind me, I will be super opinionated. And so it's also about the numbers and data is one thing. I had in the Endeavor Egypt Gala, it was a few months back, my whole speech was really about going against the numbers, and going against the data. I know I keep saying I'm a data person وكذا, but you also need to know when do you go against the numbers.
And where's the art there? ايه الفن ان انا ابقى مفروض دلوقتي اقول الارقام بتقول كذا، بس انا هفنن وهعمل حاجة مختلفة عن
the founders got an intuition. And sometimes and انت sometimes انه I think the data is missing something. The data is missing this angle. Maybe we don't have enough time to get all the data. So there are cases where or there's just cases where you're just going to have to take the risk. The data is against you. That was the whole thing. The data is against you and you still want to do it because maybe the upside is better than the downside. أنا في Endeavor مثلا, I was back in 2010 when I went through the process. It was حاجة اسمها self-nomination. Self-nomination means no one referred you أصلا. You just nominated yourself. And the chances of a self-nominated candidate to go through the process and get selected back in the day was like 1%. It's like, screw it, we'll do it. فاللي هو لا مش هحط الافورت وبتاع على 99% chance it's not gonna go through.
وده كان هيبقى سؤالي اللي هو ايه ايه القرارات اللي اخدتها وما كانش فيه اي ارقام
موجودة.
باكينج ات. احنا دلوقتي مسكنا حته البرودكت ماركت فيت، اتكلمنا عن تحت obviously الامبريلا بتاع السكيلينج، اتكلمنا على building the team product market fit، نختار الماركت ازاي. الحته اللي you're in a very unique position to speak about is حته ايه المعادله ما بين النمو ومعادله ما بين اللي هو ان انا ابقى efficient اكتر، اعملها ازاي. ده من خلال خبرتك من Endeavor، وبرضه من خبرتك من خلال ان you're underwriting and
Yeah.
you're evaluating startups to give them that financing.
برضو I'll give a very data-driven answer. يعني when you have the right people on the team, alhamdulillah دلوقتي we have some amazing people on the team. You invest in building a model that represents the business in the best form. When a growth stage startup, حتى in a pre-seed startup, أنا بالنسبة لي and something that I've been يعني pushing so hard عامة both internally or outside is this. يعني I'm a big fan of Monte Carlo. يعني احنا مثلا في NYU I did the whole masters واتعلمت machine learning و all the algorithms و Python و R و all the visualization tools و all كل الحاجات دي كلها. في الآخر the one thing that I've been using, and I still do coding, I still do Python, I still do all of these things. So the one thing I'm doing consistently is the use of Monte Carlo simulations. And the way I use this in a way that's frictionless in my decision making is through this Oracle product that adds on to Excel اسمه Crystal Ball. فبالنسبة لي Crystal Ball is an essential. علشان the reason why it's important, usually people think Crystal Ball it's risk assessment for the risk managers والكلام ده كله. It's not, because we don't live in a deterministic world. You don't know what's going to happen in the future. There's a probability of X, Y, and Z happening. صح? And I find it يعني annoying صراحة sometimes when we say okay يعني our revenue في كذا هيبقى كذا. I like to speak about the distribution. And it's a distribution. I think founders have to يعني there's probabilistic decision making and probabilistic strategy setting that's missing a lot in how we're running businesses. Crystal Ball solves a big part of that. Crystal Ball allows you to put assumptions. And when you think about each element, زي my acquisition cost, my growth rate, my pricing, my OPEX, new products, my markets, كذا, you can have 50 to 60 assumptions. صح؟ هتعمل ايه؟ هتعمل best case, worst case, most likely ازاي؟ هتعملها ازاي؟
لا يعني بفكر في المونte كارلو simulation, and why what you're saying now makes a lot of sense. لأن it kind of assigns the probabilities دي.
You set a probability, and even if you don't know the probability, you can create a uniform distribution. بس انت برضو ممكن تقول كل element من دول is a distribution of events. Where is it a bell curve? Is it a triangular? Likely اللي هي min max most likely مثلا. Is it Pareto? Is it yes, no? Is it what is it? صح? This uniform distribution, you say, and I'm not going to bias the decision. I'm going to say it's a uniform distribution between, my CAC is a uniform distribution between, I don't know. It's going to be between 600 to 1,000, and I really don't know. Fine, put it. حطها وخلاص. وبعدين you specify what is it that I'm forecasting. So I'm going to say I'm forecasting revenue and cash and kaza and kaza and kaza and my break-even point and number of months and how much cash do I need for next year. You can set 20, 30, 50, يعني whatever you want as a forecast. And then you run the model. This is where probabilistic decision-making comes. This is where probabilistic strategy setting comes. Because when you run the model, you see a distribution of outcomes. But not just this, you can go and you can look at the sensitivities of each of these. And I can look at the sensitivity of revenue, and then I see how much is my revenue most sensitive to. My revenue is most sensitive to my assumption around growth rate. أو this product, أو كذا. So you start creating بقى these trade-offs that you talk about. Okay? If I tell you إنه it's revenue versus cash مثلا, I can get to a higher revenue, but I'm going to need 3 times more cash. Am I willing to do this ولا لا? But if I am, what are the factors? And you start playing around with, okay, this factor is the most impactful on my cash. How about we change this factor and we مثلا eliminate this product? What does it mean مثلا for me? So you start seeing sensitivities, you start seeing the factors and how they connect, and you start saying, خلاص, okay, if I lose this, if I solve this problem from a cash perspective, how does it impact revenue? إيه ده? My revenue only dropped 5%, but my cash improved 3x. Done. For me, this trade-off is very much driven by numbers, and the reason and the way to do this is to have a solid model that represents the business, and you keep iterating on it day in, day out. يعني every month you review the model, you make sure that your historical factors are factored in, your assumption ranges are in tune. You just have to keep tuning that model to represent the business, and you just keep iterating and iterating. And honestly, it sidesteps many problems. يعني it's a blessing for founders علشان خاطر you sit with the board وكذا, and كل واحد عنده رأي. I think you should do this. Why don't you guys do this وكذا? I get it, يعني people have experience وكذا. But so when you show them how everything is connected in our world, in our model, because it's nuanced, this is not the best, يعني this is not going to move the needle for us. It's there, but actually we need to focus on X, Y, and Z. So you have this kind of clarity in decision making with the team, with the board, and you instill that confidence that everyone else needs. Well, again, it's specific for me. When I run the business, if I have the numbers, I do speak with يعني more assertion and confidence in general.
قبل ما ننقل على قراركم ان انتوا تبتدوا تكسباندوا في السعودية، ايه I guess the key takeaway of the discussion كان على قد ايه الداتا مهمة، ازاي الفاوندر once they're starting the business to build the foundation صح للداتا لأن يقدروا ياخدوا القرارات دي with a lot more certainty.
Yeah, there are يعني في طبعا tools كتيرة, and again it's very nuanced على كل business عاملة ازاي, بس you can use things like amplitude, you can use احنا we use, there are different parts of this يعني, بس amplitude can capture many of the product يعني the movement of customers and data around the product and product adoption. You can use, if you're using a CRM, HubSpot or whatever, you continue to look at the data and how we're acquiring customers, and you feed that in. You need to aggregate all of this. So today, the infrastructure that exists may not be up. We started with this maybe 2-3 years ago. You bring everything through Snowflake, and then you have a looker on top. And it was very important for me to democratize access to data across the organization. So we use يعني Looker, and because Looker allows people to just go in and create their own dashboards and operational dashboards, and they can just live off of it. يعني. And one of the biggest challenges is like who owns the single source of truth, because you will have all of these data points. But which numbers do we trust? It's very important to have someone who owns the integrity of data overall, and the integrity and democratization of data in general inside a company. When you have that, a lot of things become easier. It doesn't mean in Homa they are in charge of every single platform out there, but at least they're in charge of making sure that data that's being created is ingested somewhere where everyone can read from it. يعني.
وحاجة برضو we had mentioned before we came into the interview of the importance of having an owner for the data في حتة expansion برضو، اللي هو you have that اللي هو في حد هنا is trying to cut cost and someone here on a different team is trying to expand. and you spoke about قبل ما نخش الانترفيو how it's important to have an owner that facilitates الحتتين دول. And I think there's something that resonated with me there. If you can briefly mention it قبل ما نخش في موضوع السعودية, that would be amazing.
Sure. I think maybe what we were talking about back then, sometimes something that we've done, we've realized, and then we got confirmation on in general from other amazing people. It's hard when your growth is a function of two different teams or different people, and then it kind of goes up to you as a CEO to try and make it. You can't. It's a daily thing. فإحنا بالنسبة لنا some of the recent changes we've made is, okay, you want to grow revenue and sales and كذا, بس it's susceptible to our credit reviews and credit management, and في الآخر the credit team pretty much has veto right to say, okay, this customer gets this credit line, or we're not going to take this customer. So we used to have kind of these two decisions of growth and credit as separate, but now we've created credit, growth, and performance so that we kind of eliminate that need for, it's just one person who is not the CEO who has that ability to make that trade-off between credit performance versus revenue on a daily basis, right? Before they were, they were both reporting to myself and my co-founder, but it's hard to do this. And then a few weeks later, I was reading about Bordo Jeff Bezos, and something that's super interesting was we've always been trying to improve communication between revenue and credit. Always. Then we read, and Jeff actually tries to eliminate communication altogether as opposed to streamline it. So it made a lot of sense. Whenever you start thinking about these two teams are not communicating well together, we need to improve communication between these two teams or these two functions, I think you should be asking, how do I eliminate the communication altogether between these two functions?
Well, yeah, and I guess that's also a key takeaway of how it's important sometimes to centralize to avoid the حتة communication where things start going against each other, which is quite important. And that's, I guess, what in some sense data does. It's a centralization of everything, really. That's at least how I think about it. Moving بقى على موضوع السعودية. عملتوا البريس ريليس، احكي لي عنه أكتر.
احنا طبعا we did a lot of thinking about what's next for us. Mexico, alhamdulillah, we've got strong momentum, economics, growing, understanding how do we grow from there. We have like a winning formula for Mexico. We know the key sectors that we're growing for. As a company, Taban, we have a clear product vision of what we're trying to do. So now how can we replicate it in some of the markets that we were already in? We have exposure to, and where do we want to double down? For us, it was it was Saudi versus other markets. And Saudi made a lot of sense for us. I had this whole thing for the board, top 10 reasons why Saudi makes more sense for us than the other markets, Taban. And there's so many things, but one of the biggest drivers, Taban, is, in general, how much support SMEs are getting from government. It's just on the national agenda to make SMEs better and grow, and there's so much support for that. The market is very big. The need is there. Your ability to be in Saudi and the potential for a liquidity event in Saudi is higher than anywhere else. You can use that to open up other markets as well, where the products that you're building for Saudi will make sense for other products, as opposed to other markets where you've built for that market. Even if it's big enough, it's very hard to take that product with all the nuances that you have around it and scale it outside. It gives you optionality for other markets as well. Currency, from a currency perspective, you don't have to deal with devaluations because it's really pegged to the dollar, so it makes your operational life much easier. How tribal is perceived in general is high. If you continue to build on that, There's so many reasons, يعني, and we've been excited صراحة to double down on Saudi the coming period إن شاء الله.
ما عندناش وقت كتير بس يعني when we were opening this conversation I was driven by the curiosity really ليه الشخص ده قال لي to speak to Amr Shady, and I was like okay what is it, and I now understand
الله يخليك.
genuinely, and I hope and I'm quite certain genuinely in this would be very very beneficial for the people who are listening to it. وبجد عايز أشكرك
Thank you Rafai.
for this and
Thank you so much. It means a lot.
genuinely.
الله يخليك.
Thank you
Thank
so
you so
much.
much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.